Hey y'all, this is the Goblin King welcoming you to the end of Burt-ober with another great movie review. This time we've got a great one for you folks. One of Tim Burton's first films and unarguably one of his best films, Beetlejuice. I do believe I've mentioned this before, but for those a little bit behind, remember, no child left behind, people. This has been one of my favorite films since I myself was merely a youngling. Yes, I was a fucked up child. Yet another one of those things I've said before and that I'll proudly own. I take that another step further and confess that Lydia Deetz, played by a very young Winona Ryder, was my first childhood crush as well. I was a weird child who grew up into a weird adult. Yes, I still have a thing for the goth chicks. Despite my utter disparagement of any sort of PC culture, I'll just leave it at that. We all know the sort of girls that are generally drawn to the goth subculture, and we'll just say I'm more of an early-aughts Suicide Girls kind of guy. Anywho, before I got off on that uncalled for tangent where I said the quiet part out loud, I was saying that I was a weird kid that really loved Beetlejuice. Not just because Michael Keaton was funny either. Me and my Tim Burton aesthetic romance was born with this movie. However, before I get more into that, I do believe I need to go into the whole synopsis part of the video. So, without further ado, Beetlejuice follows the life, death, and afterlife of a small-town Connecticut couple, Adam and Barbara Maitland, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis. Yes, I get the bit of irony in that, me covering an early Alec Baldwin movie with everything going on. I honestly actually forgot the man was in this movie. Don't ask me why or how that happened. I really don't understand how I forgot that pertinent fact myself. Anyway, after a freak accident leaves them deceased, Adam and Barbara find themselves haunting their old family home when a yuppie family from New York City, the Deetz, move into their old home so the husband can get away from his hectic city life. He brings with him his New York artsy wife and their very goth daughter, Lydia. Desperate for a peaceful afterlife, the Maitlands determine to get rid of the Deetzes in any way they can. Unfortunately, they're woefully unprepared to deal with the business of haunting and call upon the dubious help of a, basically, hobo ghost that calls himself Beetlejuice. Then antics, shenanigans, and fun abound, with a few sandworms to round out the mix. Beetlejuice is really the first movie where you really get to see Tim Burton's unique aesthetic clearly on display. This was only his second movie directing, so it's not completely in your face the way it is in his later movies, such as Sleepy Hollow or even Planet of the Apes. However, it's not nearly as sparse as it was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. However, it does appear in pretty good chunks, such as in the ghosts and the afterlife scenes, as well as in Mrs. Deetz's dubious sculpture and a few other spots as well. One of those twisted trees he seems to love so much even makes an appearance here. Also, the design of the Maitland's house itself was pretty Tim Burton, to be honest, as well as the interior once Mrs. Deetz gets her hands on it. Let's see, the acting was all pretty solid. I'm not sure how experienced the whole cast was in this film. I'm sure most of them had been doing movies for a bit by this point in 1988. I mainly remember Catherine O'Hara from Home Alone, though, to be honest. Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis were both good. I recognize the guy who played Mr. Deetz, but I can never remember his damn name. Winona Ryder's performance was a little overdramatic at the time, though. To be fair, she was playing a goth teenager, so I can be generous and say that a lot of that was probably due to the part rather than her acting ability. I think she's pretty good in Stranger Things, after all. The true standout in this movie, however, is definitely Michael Keaton. Seriously, the man chewed up the damn scenery every time he was on camera. It was pretty glorious to watch. He's such a believable dirtbag, too. It's great. I mean, there's a reason that Beetlejuice was clearly the fan favorite and the title character, after all. They even gave the character his own Saturday morning cartoon. Also, which I loved and watched all the time, by the way. It was so fucking weird. Although I have to admit that I'm definitely not sure how this role translates to being cast as Bruce Wayne in the Batman movie, which came out the following year. I mean, this role? Really? So that goes over what I think is good about the movie, what didn't really work for me. Now, I know that with things I watch, I tend to be very favorable to them. I get it. However, you gotta remember that I'm reviewing things, especially right now, that I already love and have loved for decades. Obviously, my opinion is pretty biased when it comes to these things. I try very hard not to let that cloud my judgment, but it can't always be helped. All I can really do is give my honest opinion of something and let you decide on whether or not you'll give it a shot. So the basic story is pretty good overall. It's pretty unique, especially for the time. I don't really recall there being a lot out there that was really telling a story from the monster's point of view. So that was good. The pacing overall was pretty decent. There were a handful of scenes that could have been trimmed up a bit that would have sped things up, I suppose. The dinner scene was both good and bad. It was an interesting and pretty funny scene, however, it does feel like it ran just a little long and took a bit to get to sort of the punchline of the whole thing. Now, generally, I'm not good at spotting plot holes or contrivances. Again, especially in things that I really enjoy. I'm honestly not even sure if this actually qualifies. However, I have always wondered why the actual fuck there'd be a spell in the handbook for the recently deceased that would allow the living to summon the dead. I mean, it just kind of feels like a little contrived. Like the screenwriters weren't sure what to do to get to the climax of the movie, especially working within the rule they'd already created for the universe. The scene itself isn't bad, it's just always left me wondering is all. Oh, yes, and Otho was both awesome and terrible just as a character. Well, I think that's really all I've got for you on this one. Overall, it's a good movie. Definitely one of Tim Burton's best. Michael Keaton is awesome in this one. My little boy crush on Winona Ryder from this movie was eventually replaced by the goth queen herself, Christina Ricci. All was well with the world. Anyway, what do you think of Beetlejuice if you've seen it? Let me know in the comments section down below. While you're down there, maybe like the video and subscribe to my crap. I'll see you on the next one. Blades.